So it's those three, right? It's those three, right? Oh, fucking hell. What happened to 3 bags?
Oh, we went into Barnes & Noble.
Alright, come on.
Hey, look, it's not just me.
But those aren't staying at this house, are they?
Are you filming?
Okay, where they
Yes.
go.
Hey guys, Bartel's Bookshelf here with yet another book haul video. Yes, I know, that's all I've been doing lately, but I like buying books. It's a disease, alright? This weekend, for my birthday, well, for mine and Nakia at Plot Twists, it was kind of both of our birthdays. As I said in my previous haul video, we tend to consolidate our celebrations together. But this weekend, we decided to go to Reno, Nevada, where we went to a used books. We stayed in a really nice hotel, similar to last time when we went to San Francisco. We stayed in a really nice hotel, had a good night's sleep. I ate some chow mein that was pretty good. And then the next morning, we went to Grassroots Books in Reno, Nevada, which was surprisingly dangerous. So the reason that we wanted to come here was because out back, they were offering, every Sunday, they were offering a deal where you could fill up an entire paper bag full of books, and you could buy the whole thing for $5. So we did that, and I came away with quite a bit. But then we went inside the actual store itself, which you can see here, and surprisingly, everything inside the store was really cheap too. Even the stuff that was being offered for new prices was almost everything in here was under $10. There were a few things I found that were new that went for like $5, $6. So we ended up coming away with even more books. And then to cap it all off, we went to the local Barnes & Noble in Reno, which was this huge 2-story building. Massive. One of the biggest Barnes & Nobles I've ever been to. And we bought even more books. So all in all, I think I spent a little under $200 on books. So we have talked about it. Aaron wasn't too happy, as you probably saw in in the preamble here. But we did decide that this is kind of, because this was our we both turned 30 this year. This was kind of our big sort of birthday blowout. But after this, we're kind of gonna cool it for a little while in the book buying, obviously, because I admit, we've been going a little bit crazy, and I think I might try taking up Ollie's 100-book challenge properly after this. But until then, as always, if I'm gonna buy books, I'm gonna make a video out of it. I'm gonna get content out of it. So here we go. This is gonna be a long, long video. I have dozens of books here, but hopefully you'll find this interesting. So here we go. I'm not gonna worry about grouping any of this by like where we bought it or whatever. There's so much here, it doesn't matter. So first of all, I have John Jake's North and South trilogy. This is the first one, North and South. This is the second, Love and War. And this is the third, Heaven and Hell. So John Jake's was I'll hold up the first book here just so you have something to look at. So John Jake's was a very famous historical fiction author. Along with the North and South trilogy, he wrote, what was it? The Kent Family Chronicles, which was like it was like 7 books or whatever. But this is a very famous trilogy, about a very famous trilogy about 2 great family dynasties spanning 3 generations, and it's about how they're sort of driven apart by the Civil War. So, you know, Civil War fiction, sort of family saga type thing, very big, epic novels. In fact, all of these, I think, are over 800 pages. Let me have a look here. Yeah, the second one's over 1,000, and this last one is a little under 800. So over, what, like 2,000 pages of content, of story there. But I've heard a lot of good things about John Jake's. People really like him. I don't know, like, maybe some people find it, like, I don't know, potboiler, I don't know, popular fiction. whatever. It seems interesting. It's one of the things that I've heard a lot about. It was very famous. I've always wanted to read it. It was turned into a mini-series, as you can see there, with Patrick Swayze. So just one of those things I've always heard about but never read. So I figured, why not? I might as well try it. I don't know. I don't know if it has any sort of problematic elements. It probably does, but we'll see. So yeah, that's North and South, the North and South trilogy. And another trilogy here. This is by one of my favorite authors, who I've mentioned many times before, John le Carre. This is his Carre trilogy. So this is a Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, which most of you probably know because it was turned into a very famous film. And then the second book, The Honourable Schoolboy. And the final book, Smiley's People. So I'll just hold up the first one again. So yeah, Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. I mean, if most of you have seen the movie, you probably know what it's about. But it's about a mole in what MI5, or what they call the circus, and it's about these sort of long, complicated machinations in order to sort of weed out this mole. And it continues on in the later books where George Smiley, the sort of main character of these books, goes up against Carla, who's a Soviet spy who's kind of his nemesis. So these are very, very famous. I've only read The Looking Glass War and what was it? The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, but I really loved them. And these are supposed to be some of his most famous, some of his best books. I've always wanted to read them. So I decided to just grab the whole trilogy. I love his writing. It's very dense, very complex. There's a lot of morally gray characters, a lot of morally gray actions. There's a lot of sort of righteous anger in his stuff. It's really, really interesting. Very, very different from typical spy fiction, James Bond type stuff. A lot more realistic, somewhat more sedate, somewhat morose, I guess you'd say. There are no real winners in John le Carre's novels. There are no real good guys, just the people who are least bad. So yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about this trilogy. Always wanted to read it, so I have them now. Next, I have The Impressionist by Hari Kunzru. Hari Kunzru is a British writer that I've heard a lot about. I believe he's been nominated for the Pulitzer, or he's been nominated for some book award, I don't know. But this is about Pran Nath Razdan, the boy who will become the Impressionist, was fathered in circuitous circumstances by an Englishman and passed off by his Indian mother as the child of her husband, a wealthy man of high caste. So it's about this young Indian man who is... I guess mixed Indian-English man, who ends up becoming he ends up becoming sort of a sort of con artist, or a what do you call it? He ends up becoming sort of a con artist, a trickster. The title, The Impressionist, is based off his impressions of people. He's able to sort of be chameleon-like and slip into many different roles. I love stories about characters like that, sort of con artists, tricksters, that kind of thing. And I read a little bit of the book, and I really like the writing style. It's a historical fiction as well. Imprisoned in a brothel and dressed in women's clothes, his sensuous beauty is exploited as he is made to become Ruxana, a pawn in a game between colony and empire. So it just sounds really, really interesting. Lots of stuff about colonization, British India, that kind of thing. Heard a lot about Hari Kunzru. So yeah, we'll see if it's any good. Okay, so next I have One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I've heard a lot about this. This was made into a TV show on Peacock, I think, or something like that. This is a YA thriller that sounds really, really cool. It's sort of it's like a thriller version of The Breakfast Club, where it's 5 kids who walk into detention one morning, except one of them is killed. And each of the other 4 students all has a different story about what happened, and sort of the game of the story is to figure out which one of them is lying. So I love stuff like that. I love twisty-turny thrillers. I love sort of the dark side of high school type things. Seems really interesting. And the Outcast character, Simon the Outcast, is the creator of Bayview High's notorious gossip app. So he had dirt on all these people. So everybody has a motive to want him dead. Just sounds really cool, really interesting. Sort of Mean Girls mixed with Breakfast Club, maybe a little bit of Heathers. I don't know. I love that sort of stuff, sort of dark, twisted high school stories. So, and as I said, heard a lot about it. Hope it's good. Next I have I Am Charlotte Simmons by Tom Wolfe. I've heard a lot of, again, Tom Wolfe is a very famous writer, a very famous sort of proponent of the new journalism style. Wrote the novel Bonfire of the Vanities, which I own but haven't read yet. But he writes these sort of big, epic, satirical tomes, and this is one of those. I believe this was one of his more recent ones. 2004. And this is takes place in DuPont University, which is like this very high-end sort of rich people's college. And it's about this girl, Charlotte Simmons, who has to, who basically, a wide-eyed, bookish freshman from a strict, devout, poor, and poorly educated family in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. And so basically she ends up falling into sort of the rich, educated college trap of, sex and drugs and all that crazy stuff. Sounds very interesting, very satirical, kind of maybe a little bit of a Bret Easton Ellis vibe, like Rules of Attraction kind of thing, and I really liked that book. Again, I like sort of I don't know if you'd call it dark academia, but I like books that sort of delve into sort of the dark side of academia, or sort of the underbelly of it. So hopefully that's good. Heard a lot of good things. And it's a big book, too. It's like, it's almost 700 pages, so big chunky boy. Next, I have HeartShaped Box by Joe Hill. Of course, a lot of you know Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King. I read his novel Horns a while ago, and I really liked that. I read his collection of novellas, Strange Weather, which was a lot of fun. But I've never read this book, HeartShaped Box, which is, I believe, was his first novel, and is kind of where he sort of gained his reputation. It sounds really interesting. It's sort of a ghost story about a guy named Judas Coyne, who's a collector of the macabre, a cookbook for cannibals, a used hangman's noose, a snuff film. An aging death metal rock god, his taste for the unnatural is as widely known to his legions of fans as the notorious excesses of his youth. So he finds... So he adds this a new item to his collection, which is the suit of a dead man. And of course, the suit turns out to be haunted, and very creepy, scary things happen. Heard a lot of good things about it. People really, really love this book. There's blurbs on the back here from Neil Gaiman and Kelly Link, so I'm really looking forward to this. I like Joe Hill as a writer, so I'm really, really hoping this turns out good. Now I have The Blood Countess by Andrei Codrescu. I literally know nothing about this. This is one of the ones I got in the $5 bag thing. This is all I know about this is it's a book about Elizabeth Bathory, the Hungarian countess, 1560 to 1613, who was rich, beautiful, well-educated, and she killed, allegedly, hundreds of girls, virgin girls, and bathed in their blood because she believed that it kept her youthful. I've read a few sort of fictionalized adaptations of her story. One of my favorites was, I think it was Sanguinary, by Ray Russell, which was a really, really great novella about Elizabeth Bathory. But I've never heard about this, but it should be interesting. The writer, Andrei Codrescu, he was born in Romania, born in Transylvania, and apparently lives in New Orleans. I've never heard of him before, don't know anything about him, don't know anything about this book, but it sounds very lush, very sensuous, very violent and gory. And actually, one of the things that kind of sold me on this was there's a note in the front of this book that says, Mike, something to remember me by. Revelry, debauchery, slaying of virgins, all words I'm sure leap to your mind when you think of me. I hope you like it. Have a happy birthday, Sarah. So, Mike and Sarah, I don't know where you are, but I have a copy of your book, and Sarah, your little note in the book, Revelry and Debauchery and Killing of Young Virgins, that made me want to read it, so we'll see if it's any good. So, yeah, that's that. Another one that I don't really know anything about, but this is a Scream Sight by Justina Ireland. Again, this is one of the ones that was in the bag, with part of the bag deal. It's about a woman named Sabrina who wants to be an investigative reporter, and she ends up researching this popular website called Scream Sight, where people post amateur horror videos and compete for the most screams, but some clips seem a little too real. So, I was just sold based on that concept. I love stuff about sort of found footage type things, sort of internet horror kind of stuff, urban legend sort of things. It just sounds really cool and interesting. Sounds creepy. We'll see how it is. Next, I have an X-Files novel here. This is Skin by Ben Mezrich. Again, don't know anything about this. Don't know anything about the writer, but it's X-Files, and I'm a huge X-Files fan. I've been binging the show for a few years now. I'm still catching up. I think I'm up to season 7 now. And for those of you who know me, that's a big deal. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I really got into the X-Files over the last couple years, and I've really been enjoying it. And I knew there were a few novels, but I've never read any of them. But this was at that the bag deal at Grassroots Books, so I was like, you know what? Screw it. It's an X-Files novel. At the very least, hopefully as a fan, I'll enjoy it. Hopefully it'll be fun. It sounds interesting. It's a fairly common, if ghoulish, procedure, the harvesting of skin from corpses for temporary use on emergency burn victims until their own grafts are ready. But when a team of moonlighting medical students accidentally take skin from the wrong donor, the results are catastrophic. A New York City hospital ward is destroyed in a psychotic bloodbath, and an elderly professor admitted for a routine skin graft is suddenly the city's most wanted fugitive. So that just sounds cool and interesting. I want to know who's the skin from, what's going on, you know. What's going to happen to Mulder and Scully? I guess we'll find out. I got to read the book, so hopefully that's fun. So this is a fairly recent release, Big Boy, that I've heard a lot about. Yeah, over 600 pages. When did this come out? 2020. Well, this was originally published in 2019 in New Zealand, but this was first published in the U.S. in 2021, so this is a very new release, but I got it for like $5 at Grassroots Books. This is The Absolute Book by Elizabeth Knox. I don't know much about it, it just sounded really interesting. Taryn Cornick believes that the past, her sister's violent death and her own ill-conceived revenge, is behind her and she can get on with her life. She has written a successful book about the things that threaten libraries: insects, damp, light, fire, carelessness, and uncaring, but not all of the attention it brings her is good. A policeman, Jacob Berger, questions her about a cold case. Then there are questions about a fire in the library at her grandparents' house and an ancient scroll box known as the Fire Starter, as well as threatening phone calls and a mysterious illness. Finally, a shadowy young man named Shift appears, forcing Taryn and Jacob toward a reckoning felt in more than one world. So it's a sort of a creepy, horror-ish fantasy novel about books and libraries and stuff, and I love anything having to do with that. You know, sort of taking books and finding sort of and sort of literalizing the magic that we all feel with them. I love stuff like that. Heard a lot of good things about this. It's a big chunky boy, so if it's good, hopefully I like it. if I like it, you know, I can enjoy the ride. So yeah, hopefully that's good. Now we have one I'm really excited about. This is The Grey Bastards by Jonathan French. I mean, really all I need to say about this is Orc Motorcycle Gang. Right? That's all you need to know. But yeah, so it's about this sort of a half-orc sort of gang called the Grey Bastards, and sort of the things that happen to them, the adventures that they get into, the scrapes. Just sounds really entertaining, really fun. I don't like this cover so much. This was a reprint of an independently published book, and the original cover art is so much better. I'll put it up here so you guys can see, but yeah, this is still, it sounds really, really cool, really fun. It's about orcs. I mean, come on, you know, big boy orcs. Got to read that, right? So yeah, really looking forward to that. Hope that's good. Let's see, we got a thriller here. This is Good Girls Lie by J.T. Ellison. Again, don't know much about this. This is one of the ones that came in the bag deal. But again, it's sort of a thriller set at a private school named the Good School. The Good School is known as a Silent Ivy, the boarding school of choice for daughters of the rich and influential. It accepts only the best and the brightest. In a world where appearances are everything, as long as students pretend to follow the rules, no one questions the cruelties of the secret societies or the dubious behavior of the privileged students who expect to get away with murder. Then a popular girl is found dead, and the truth cannot be ignored. So, of course, as I said earlier, I love sort of dark academia type stuff. Sounds really fun. Lots of evil, bitchy girls, so I don't know, hopefully that'll be entertaining. This was just one that sounded interesting. So this is Strange Images of Death, Detective Joe Sandlin's investigation by Barbara Cleverly. This is part of the Soho Crime series, who publish sort of well-known or sort of occult British crime thriller type stuff. I have a few of their other books that I've shown in some other videos. But this one sounded really interesting because most of these I would have thought would have been kind of, like Get Carter type stuff, sort of gritty 1970s type stuff. But this takes place in Provence in 1926 with a Scotland Yard detective named Joe Sandilands, who I guess is a recurring character for this person's stories. Again, never heard of her, never heard of these books, but it just sounds really fun. A Scotland Yard detective in France, working with the French police judiciaire. I don't know, trying to solve a murder. Sounds entertaining. Hopefully it's good. Another one I've heard a whole lot about. This is Wool by Hugh Howey. This is a sort of post-apocalyptic sci-fi story where it takes place in a world where the air that we breathe, the air is so contaminated that breathing it just kills everyone. And everybody lives in these big sort of underground silos, almost like the vaults from Fallout. And it's just about sort of the stuff that happens to people in there. Again, I don't know a ton about it. I've just heard a lot about it from various people. Moid Moidelhoff at Media Death Cult is a huge fan of this book and this series. It's a trilogy, I believe. This is originally self-published and it became this huge hit. Again, heard a lot about it. I love post-apocalyptic stuff. I love stuff where it's like, people sort of trapped underground, sort of new societies that sort of form out of these like a post-apocalyptic events. And it mentions on the back here, you lived in a place where every birth required a death, and the choices you made could save lives or destroy them. So that sounds really intriguing. So I'm looking forward to getting into that eventually. Now I have a sort of a satirical superhero novel here. This is All Those Explosions Were Someone Else's Fault by James Allen Gardner. I mean, I'm sold just based on the title, right? But I've seen this book over and over at half price, and I've always been wanting to read it because I love superheroes, and I've been wanting to read more kind of superhero fiction. So I really, really wanted to read this, but it was always like $10, $9 every time I went to half price, but they had it really, really cheap at Grassroots Books, so I grabbed it. So it says, Sparks are champions of weird science, complete with capes and costumes and amazing superpowers that only make sense if you don't think about them too hard. Darklings are creatures of myth and magic, ghosts, vampires, werebeasts, and the like. Doors creak at their approach, cobwebs gather where they linger. Kim Lom is just an ordinary college student until a freak scientific accident, what else, transforms Kim and her 3 housemates into honest-to-goodness sparks and drafts them into the never-ending war between the light and dark. Now they have to master their new abilities while coming up with cool new costumes and code names for themselves, but the learning curve is steep and there's no time to lose. So again, sort of a satirical exploration of superheroes. I love, I mean, look, I'm wearing a Spider-Man shirt. I love superheroes. I love this shit, whether it's like satirical or completely serious. I love superheroes. So this just looks like a lot of fun. James Allen Gardner apparently is a Canadian writer. So I don't know. Seems interesting. And there's some superhero shit on the back. So I don't know. I mean, and just that title. Isn't that title great? So I'm really looking forward to that eventually. And I have a book that I've talked about many, many times before, but I really, really enjoyed and I wanted to read again. This is The English Patient by Michael Ondaatje. I've already talked about this before, so I won't spend too long on it. But this is, as it says here, national bestseller, winner of the Booker Prize of the year I was born, actually, 1992. Takes place in a bombed-out hospital in World War II. A nurse named Hannah, who's taking care of this mysterious English patient who was badly disfigured in an accident, can't speak, and a few of the other characters who sort of come into her life. The Indian sapper Kip, who searches for hidden bombs. There's Caravaggio, who's a thief, who also gets involved. It's a very beautifully written book, very sad, talks a lot about English colonialism and sort of the human capacity for destruction. Really, really good book. I wanted to read it again, so I bought this at Grassroots Books. So, yeah, looking forward to eventually, at some point, rereading that. This is another sort of 20th century classic that I've always been meaning to read. This is All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren. This is a Pulitzer Prize winner that was originally published in 1946. 1946. This is a sort of a very famous political novel about sort of a man who I believe he's trying to become governor, and it's sort of about sort of the political running for office, sort of the dark side of the political world. I've just heard a lot of good things about it. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It's a classic I've always been meaning to read. I believe this was made into a film as well in the 40s or 50s. So yeah, again, classic. Always been wanting to read it. Hopefully it's good. It's one of those old... it's a Bantam paperback, but it's only 400 pages, but the print is like microscopic. See that? I believe in most editions of this it goes over to 600 pages, but this is so tiny it gets down to 400. But like I said, it was part of the bag sale, so couldn't pass it up. Why not? Let's see what it's like. Hopefully it's good. I hope all these are good, obviously, but you know what I mean. No, this is a classic, a sci-fi classic I've always been wanting to read. Heard so much about it. This is Philip Jose Farmer, To Your Scattered Bodies Go, book 1 of the Riverworld saga. So this was published in the 70s, I believe, right? Yeah, 1971. So this just sounds, I've heard a lot about this, it just sounds fucking weird. Winner of the Hugo Award. All those who ever lived on Earth have found themselves resurrected, healthy, young, and naked as newborns, on the grassy banks of a mighty river in a world unknown. Miraculously provided with food, but with no clues to the meaning of their strange new afterlife, billions of people from every period of Earth's history and prehistory must start again. So this has a lot of historical figures in it. Sir Richard Francis Burton. There's an English-speaking Neanderthal. Alice Liddell Hargreaves, who was the Victorian girl who was the inspiration for Alice in Wonderland. A lot of just weird, interesting characters, a bizarre plot. Philip Jose Farmer is a classic sci-fi writer. Really looking forward to this. Hopefully it's good. It's very, very short, so... and it just sounds bizarre and crazy and imaginative, and I love that sort of stuff, so looking forward to that. Next we have this. This is Muscle, Confessions of an Unlikely Bodybuilder by Samuel Wilson Fussell. One guess as to why I bought this. But I of course I just saw this. It's a memoir about a bodybuilder, published in 1991. At age 26, scrawny, Oxford-educated Samuel Fussell entered a YMCA gym in New York to escape the terrors of big city life. 4 years and 80 pounds of firm, bulging muscle later, he was competing for bodybuilding titles in the Iron Mecca of Southern California. So weak from intense training and starvation he could barely walk. So it's sort of about the world of bodybuilding, sort of the dark side of bodybuilding. It goes into steroids, illness, pain, nausea, and the blurb on the top here was interesting. A kind of beefcake Alice in Wonderland. So it's about one of my favorite things. It's about muscles, and it just sounds really bizarre and interesting and potentially pretty harrowing. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully it's interesting. And if not, at least there's pictures for me to ogle over, so... I have a nonfiction book here. Apparently this is a Pulitzer Prize finalist. This is Will in the World, How Shakespeare Became Shakespeare by Stephen Greenblatt. Again, never heard of this writer, never heard of this book, but it's sort of a biography of Shakespeare and kind of exploring how... as it says here, a young man from a small provincial town moves to London in the late 1580s and in a remarkably short time becomes the greatest playwright, not of his age alone, but of all time. How is an achievement of this magnitude to be explained? How did Shakespeare become Shakespeare? So I love anything about literary history. I've always wanted to kind of learn more about Shakespeare. I flipped through a little bit of the beginning of the book and I liked the way it was written. So yeah, hopefully it'll be interesting and hopefully I'll learn something new. So there you go. Next I have Lovecraft Country by Matt Ruff. I mean, most of you probably know about this already. It was made into an HBO series. Heard so many good things about this. I've always wanted to read it. Was never able to find it for an affordable price, but they had this brand new copy at Grassroots Books for $5, so of course I had to grab it. So it's about this guy named Atticus Turner in 1950 Chicago. His father goes missing, so he embarks on a road trip to New England to find him. And basically some Lovecraftian shit happens. And apparently it uses sort of the Lovecraftian themes to explore racism in America. Sounds really, really interesting, really potentially scary. I don't know how the show is. I haven't seen it, so I don't know how it compares to the book, but I love that cover. Isn't that great? So good. So I'm really looking forward to that eventually. I really hope that's good. So there you go. And now we have First Blood by David Morrell. Of course, this was the, as it says here, the classic thriller that inspired the legendary Rambo movies. So this was indeed the novel that was the basis for the movie First Blood, which of course was the beginning of Rambo. But David Morrell is a very famous horror and thriller writer, sort of action writer. I've read a couple of his short stories, and I really, really enjoyed them. And I have a couple other of his novels that I've been meaning to get to. I've heard Creepers is really good. But First Blood is kind of where it all got started. And I believe it was, Ollie and Juan at Plagued by Visions read this recently. Buddy read this recently, and they both really, really enjoyed it. So I had to grab it. It just sounds really fun, really sort of muscular and masculine and exciting and violent and crazy. I know that Morrell is a good writer based on what I've read of his stuff, so really hope that's good. Looking forward to that. I have an interesting one here. So this is Red Rain by R.L. Stine. So this is one of R.L. Stine's few adult novels. Most people obviously know him, for his children's horror novels, Fear Street, Goosebumps, that kind of thing. But this was written in 2012, and I believe this is his only adult novel next to, I believe it was Superstitious. So I don't know, it just sounded really interesting. I don't really know what it's about or anything, but I've heard it's really gory, and I just think it will be interesting to see sort of what R.L. Stine does when writing for an adult audience. No idea if it's any good or not. Austin at Monster Blood, you'll have to tell me if you've read this. Did you like it? Would you recommend it? We'll see. So yeah, I don't know. There you go. R.L. Stine wrote some books for adults. Who knew? Okay, now I have another sort of a children's classic here. This is Maniac McGee by Jerry Spinelli. This is actually the 25th anniversary edition with an introduction by Catherine Applegate, the writer of the Animorphs series, so should be interesting. Again, this is a children's classic, won the Newbery Award. It's about a kid named Maniac McGee whose parents died, and he sort of became a legend, known for how fast he could run. He was special, all right, and this is his story, it says. So from what I understand, this is sort of a magical realism type story, very sort of dark and emotional potentially. Again, I don't know much about this. This is a very famous children's book, but as I've mentioned before, I didn't really read a lot of the children's books that were really popular at the time, aside from a few like The Giver and stuff like that. But as I've gotten older, I've been kind of going back and rediscovering a lot of these old children's classics and finding that a lot of them are actually really, really good. And so I hope this is good too. I've heard a lot about it, obviously. So yeah, don't know. We'll see. Next we have The Line of Beauty by Alan Hollinghurst. Alan Hollinghurst is a very famous British author who writes frequently about gay themes. I have one of his earlier novels, The Swimming Pool Library, which I haven't read, but I've also heard is very good. This apparently takes place in Margaret Thatcher's London. Nick Guest has moved in with the Feddens, a family whose patriarch is a Conservative member of Parliament. An innocent in matters of politics and money, Nick becomes caught up in the Feddens' world of parties and excess, as well as in his own private pursuit of beauty. Framed by the two general elections that returned Margaret Thatcher to power, The Line of Beauty unfurls through 4 extraordinary years of change and tragedy. So it sort of explores Thatcherite London, sort of 1980s. I believe winner of the Man Booker Prize. Heard a lot of great things about it. Alan Hollinghurst is supposed to be an amazing writer. Really looking forward to that. And he writes a lot about gay themes, so hopefully that sort of aspect will be explored. So, yeah, look forward to that. Next, this is one of the ones I got from Barnes & Noble because it was relatively cheap. And, again, it's a novel I've heard a lot about. This is The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison. This is a sort of a Game of Thrones-esque sort of fantasy political machination type of thing, which is about a half-goblin, the youngest son of the Emperor, has lived his entire life in exile, far from the imperial court and the intrigue that surrounds it. But then his father and 3 half-brothers, who are the heirs to the throne ahead of him, die together in an airship crash. Maya is summoned to take his father's throne. So it's about sort of this Goblin Emperor sort of suddenly being thrust into political power and sort of navigating the waters of sort of a political life in the kingdom. I've heard a lot of good things about it. It's supposed to be sort of very like classic fantasy in terms of the way that it's written. It seems really interesting. Hope it's good. So, yeah. And I think she's written... I don't know if she's written a sequel to this book, but I know she's written some other books that I've also heard good things about. So if I like this, there's more to look into. So, next I have a novel by Jack L. Chalker. This is The River of Dancing Gods. This is one of the ones I got in the $5 bag. I don't know anything about it. It just sounded interesting. Life had not been kind to Joe and Marge. Now, according to the stranger who met them on a road that wasn't there, they were due to die in 19 minutes, 18 seconds. But the ferry boat that waited to take them across the Sea of Dreams could bring them to a new and perhaps better life. There lay a world where fairies danced by moonlight and sorcery became real. Joe could become a mighty thewed barbarian warrior. Marge could be beautiful and find her magical self. And it was even as Throckmorton P. Redigore, the strange wizard, had promised. But there was a great deal more, as they soon learned. This was a world where hell still strove to win its ancient war, and demon princes sent men into battles of dark magic. It was a world where Joe and Marge must somehow help prevent the coming of Armageddon. So it seems sort of very like classic fantasy. When was this published? 1984. So yeah, 80s fantasy. I've heard of Jack L. Chalker. I have a bunch of his books. I have most of his. I think I have all of the Well of Souls series, which I've heard a lot of good things about. I've heard a lot about Jack L. Chalker. The main thing that interested me about his books is that apparently, especially in the Well of Souls series, a lot of them involve the physical transformation of the characters. And it seems like this might have a bit of that too, with the mighty thewed barbarian warrior. So I don't know. Those of you who know me know I'm interested in that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Seems interesting. Seems maybe a little bit sort of satirical, sort of poking fun at like fantasy tropes. I like fantasy stories where sort of people from our world are taken to a fantasy world and end up becoming, big badass heroes. So hopefully that's good. And I believe it's a part of a series. So if I like it, there you go. There's more to read. This is another sort of modern classic that I've always been meaning to read. This is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. I don't know much about this. It's just one of those things I've heard so much about. Amy Tan is a Chinese-American writer. Very, very famous. This was made into a film. Vignettes alternate back and forth between the lives of 4 Chinese women in pre-1949 China and the lives of their American-born daughters in California. So sort of about the Asian American experience. It was a huge bestseller, 9 months on the New York Times bestseller list. Sort of a modern classic that, again, heard a lot about, never read, but I would like to expand my sort of horizons and read more sort of things that are sort of outside of my worldview. And again, this is supposed to be a modern classic. I've heard so much about it, so I hope it's good. Another big boy here. This is Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. This is an epic, how many pages is this edition? 973-page historical epic that takes place in... Oh, shit. It doesn't say. I can't remember exactly when it takes place, but it takes place, I believe, in the 11th century, I believe, 12th century, somewhere around there. And it's basically this huge epic historical tome about the building of a cathedral and sort of the various people involved with that and the lives and everything. Again, a big bestseller. I've heard a ton about it. It was made into a mini-series, I believe. People really, really like this book. It sounds really interesting. Well, I don't know. Maybe that doesn't sound interesting to you, but I've heard a lot of people say, like it sounds boring. It's about, building a cathedral, but people say it's like it's a really fascinating read, really, really interesting, big, epic tome, small print. I don't know. We'll see. I hope it's good. And if it is good, I think Ken Follett, I don't know if this is part of a series, but I know he's got a bunch of other books that are similar sort of historical fiction type things that deal with sort of early British history and that kind of thing. So yeah, there's that. Some older sci-fi here. sci-fi slash fantasy. So this is Achilles Choice by Larry Niven and Stephen Barnes. Again, I mentioned Larry Niven and Stephen Barnes before. They wrote Dream Park together, and I think they wrote a bunch of other things. But this just sounded... I was sold just based on the concept. Listen to this. The gods of Olympus offered a fateful choice to the warrior Achilles, a short, glorious life or a long, dull one. Achilles chose glory. This is the story of the 11th Olympiad in the late 21st century, a contest not only for glory but for survival, and of the woman who dared to compete for the highest stakes of all, the future of humanity. So yeah, that just sounds fascinating. Sort of a Achilles, sort of a futuristic Olympiad, illustrated by Boris Vallejo too. So check that out. And there's illustrations inside too. And let's see, yeah. So I don't know. It seems really weird and interesting. Boris Vallejo's fucking awesome. So we'll see. Another old bit of sci-fi here. When was this one published? 1984. So 80s sci-fi here with a pretty rad cover. This is Armor by John Stakely. This is a military sci-fi classic that I've heard a lot about. John Stakely also wrote, what was it called? Vampires, which was the basis for John Carpenter's film Vampires. I have a copy of that, haven't read it, heard a lot about it. But this is sort of his other famous novel. Sort of about body armor and the commando forces that use the body armor and sort of the wars that they're fighting and stuff. I don't know. Heard a lot about it, and dig that 80s deliciousness cover art. Love it. So, I don't know. Never read a lot of military sci-fi, but, I mean, it sounds cool. Power armor, fighting aliens, that kind of shit. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully it's good. And another sort of a horror classic here that I've always been meaning to read. This is Boy's Life by Robert R. McCammon. Again, heard a ton about this book. Robert R. McCammon was a huge bestseller in the 80s and early 90s. Wrote stuff like The Wolf's Hour. I have a bunch of his other books. Yeah, Swan Song, The Wolf's Hour, They Thirst, Blue World, Stinger, a whole ton of sort of 80s paperback horror classics. But this is one that I didn't have. And from what I've heard, this is kind of his... This is kind of his version of sort of a Stephen King's It kind of thing, sort of almost a ghost story kind of thing, where it's sort of people reflecting on their past as children and sort of the mysterious supernatural events that took place during those times. Specifically, this takes place in Zephyr, Alabama, in 1964. With a kid named Corey who witnesses a car accident where a car plunges into a lake that some say is bottomless. And apparently, this rescue attempt brings Corey's father face to face with a vision that will haunt him. A murdered man, naked and beaten, handcuffed to the steering wheel, a copper wire knotted around his neck. So, sounds really big, epic, interesting sort of exploration of dark underbellies of 1950s, 1960s Americana. Don't know. Heard a lot about it. I never read it. Always wanted to. And I've got a bunch of his other books, so this sort of like rounds out my McCammon collection. I hope I actually like his stuff. I've never actually read any of his books, but I've heard they're very good, very readable. So, yeah, I don't know. Looking forward to that. Next, I have The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. Again, this is sort of a modern fantasy classic. When was this published? Pretty recently, I believe. Yeah, 2006. So this is the first in the Gentleman Bastards series, which I believe is not finished yet. But this is about a man named Locke Lamora, who's sort of a thief / con artist, and the crew that he runs with called the Gentleman Bastards, and I don't know, it just sounds really fun. Apparently, like, it's got some really, like, creative cursing, some good, sort of, like, witty put-downs. I love fantasy stuff about, thieves and cut purses and con artists and that kind of thing. I heard a ton about this. It's supposed to be great. Really looking forward to it. So, yeah, we'll see if that's any good. All right, the final stack here. We're almost done. Don't worry. So, I have The Perfect Nanny by Leila Slimani. This is, I believe this is French, I believe, originally. Yeah, translated from the French by Sam Tailor. So this is a French thriller by an author, a Moroccan-French author, Leila Slimani, who I've heard a lot about. People call it sort of the French Gone Girl. When Miriam, a French-Moroccan lawyer, decides to return to work after having children, she and her husband look for the perfect nanny for their 2 young children. They never dreamed they would find Louise, a quiet, polite, devoted woman who sings to the children, cleans the family's chic apartment in Paris's upscale 10th arrondissement, stays late without complaint, and hosts enviable kiddie parties. But as the couple and the nanny become more dependent on one another, jealousy, resentment, and suspicions mount, shattering the idyllic tableau. So yeah, I love that sort of stuff, sort of creepy nannies who sort of worm their way into people's lives. Sounds like there might be a bit of stuff about like class and wealth. Don't know. Heard a lot of great things about it. Hopefully it's good. And it's not very long either. It's only about like 228 pages, so it's a very slim, quick read. So if I like it, I think she has a few other novels in English that I will hopefully look forward to reading. It sounds very similar to the Ruth Rendell book, Judgment in Stone, which I really, really enjoyed, so hopefully this is just as good as that. Now, we have one of my favorite books. I've already read this, but this was a buy one, get it 50% off at Barnes & Noble, so I just had to grab it. This is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is the Penguin Classics Deluxe Edition with this beautiful cover art. Who did this? Thomas Ott. It's beautiful, beautiful artwork. So this was Shirley Jackson's final novel, published in 1962, about a strange young girl named Mary Catherine Blackwood, who's 18 years old and lives with her sister Constance in sort of this old crumbling manor. And there's sort of whispers of some mysterious events that happened years ago that we never really learn about until towards the end of the book. And the rest of the townsfolk sort of look on them with fear and suspicion. And it's just kind of about Mary Catherine Blackwood's life among these people and sort of her very idiosyncratic worldview as things eventually get stranger and creepier and more gothic. It's a very, very slim book. This copy is only 152 pages, but it's a very powerful book. One of my favorite books ever written, right up there with The Haunting of Hill House. Shirley Jackson was just a great writer. Everything she touched was great. It was amazing. This is probably one of her best. This might be my favorite, maybe, but it has one of the greatest openings ever. Let me just read that to you. My name is Mary Catherine Blackwood. I am 18 years old, and I live with my sister Constance. I have often thought that with any luck at all, I could have been born a werewolf, because the 2 middle fingers on both my hands are the same length, but I have had to be content with what I have had. I dislike washing myself, and dogs, and noise. I like my sister Constance, and Richard Plantagenet, and Amanita phalloides, the death-cap mushroom. Everyone else in my family is dead. So, that just gets you right in there. I mean, if you don't want to read that based on that, I mean, what's wrong with you? Mary Catherine Blackwood, she's an amazing character. She's so weird and idiosyncratic and wonderfully captured by Shirley Jackson. It's a great book. Highly recommend it, and I'm really happy now that I finally own a copy of it. Next, I have Orphans of the Carnival by Carol Birch. Really, this is all I needed to know is that it's about a carnival, but it's a work of historical fiction. The author, I believe, won or was nominated for the Booker Prize. Yeah, Jamrach's. She was nominated for Jamrach's Menagerie. This is apparently inspired by a true story of a girl named Julia Pastrana, who was a 19th century woman who was, I believe she was she wanted people to see beyond her hairy visage. So she was a real person. She had the sort of, what do they call that? Hypertrichosis or whatever, the werewolf syndrome, where people have excessive body hair. She was also apparently very intelligent. She spoke multiple languages. She was an accomplished musician with an exquisite singing voice. But she eventually got work in carnivals and freak shows and that kind of thing. And it's just sort of about her life in the carnival and sort of her exploring, her life and loves and her want to be accepted. So that just sounds really great, really interesting, and it takes place in a carnival. And as all of you know, I love that sort of stuff. So really looking forward to that. These last few are all ones that I bought at Barnes & Noble, so we'll just finish that off here. So this is Day Zero by C. Robert Cargill. Dig that cover art. So I'll Laura found this originally at, I believe, at half price or maybe Barnes & Noble. I can't remember, but we ran across this. No, I think we ran across this in San Francisco. She read the back of it, and she was like, oh, this sounds great. We have to read it. And so we all found copies at the Reno Barnes & Noble, and so we all bought one. So we're all probably going to be buddy reading this soon. But it's about an apocalyptic adventure about a guy named Pounce, who is a stylish nanny bot fashioned in the shape of a plush anthropomorphic tiger. And he finds the box he'd arrived in when he was purchased years earlier. The box in which he'll be discarded when his human charge, 8-year-old Ezra Reinhardt, no longer needs a nanny. So it's about Pounce. Pounce having to make an impossible choice, join the robot revolution and fight for his own freedom, or escort Ezra to safety across the battle-scarred post-apocalyptic hellscape that the suburbs have become. So yeah, post-apocalyptic suburbs, robot uprisings, anthropomorphic tiger robot. I mean, come on, doesn't that sound fucking great? I want to read that, and we probably will very, very soon here, so really hoping that's good. So this is Goth by Otsuichi. This is a Japanese horror novel that I've heard a lot about. I've just been wanting to read more Japanese fiction, especially Japanese horror fiction, Japanese genre fiction. It says, Marino is the strangest girl in school. How could she not be, given her obsession with brutal murders? And there are plenty of murders to grow obsessed with, as the town in which she lives is a magnet for serial killers. She and her schoolmate will go to any length to investigate the murders, even putting their own bodies on the line. And they don't want to stop the killers. Marino and friend simply want to understand them. So it sounds very, very weird, very strange, very, very gothic. Japanese sort of thriller horror. I'm interested. I'm down for that. Heard a lot of good things. Hope it's good. And next I have another YA book here. This is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Again, heard a lot about this. I believe this is very popular on Book Talk. I don't know. I'm not on TikTok, but I hear about this a lot. But this is very similar. If you've ever read that book, The Westing Game, this is very similar to that. It's about a girl named Avery Grams who was swept into this game when this billionaire named Tobias Hawthorne dies and leaves her his entire fortune. The only catch, Avery must move into his sprawling mansion full of secret passages, riddles, and codes. Unfortunately for Avery, Hawthorne House is also occupied by the family that was just disinherited. This includes the 4 Hawthorne grandsons, dangerous, magnetic boys who grew up with every expectation that one day they would inherit billions. So, yeah, also sounds very similar to Knives Out, if you've seen that movie. The Westing Game. What was that other movie? Hide and Seek, I believe it was called. I love that sort of stuff, sort of puzzles and games, secret inheritances. Yeah, as it says on the back here, secret passages, elaborate riddles, billions at stake. I love that kind of stuff, and this sounded really good, so I really, really hope that's good. So we'll see. And the final book here is another one that I've heard a lot about, a modern horror novel that I believe just came out, right? Yeah, 2021. This is The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. So Chuck Wendig is a very famous, mostly known for writing sci-fi, I believe. He wrote the that Star Wars trilogy. What was it called? I can't remember. I'll put it up. And he wrote a post-apocalyptic novel called Wanderers, I believe, that I heard a lot of good things about. This is billed as a new masterpiece of literary horror. It's about a sort of a creepy haunted house and the family that used to live there and sort of the fallout that came from that. Literary horror, sort of haunted house stuff. Heard a lot of good things about this. People really, really like this book, and I was finally able to get it in paperback. I was going to get it from the library, but I was on hold for there were 30 people ahead of me, so I was like, screw it, I'll just buy it. So yeah, heard a lot of good things. Big, epic literary horror tome. This one is just a little over 500 pages, so big horror chonker. Really, really looking forward to that. Hope it's good. And that finishes off this epic book haul from Reno. So if you guys are still watching, I hope you enjoyed. Which of these books have you read? Which would you recommend? Talk to me. Let's talk books. And hopefully I'll have my wrap-up video out soon. I'm sorry I haven't been posting much. I've been sort of all over the place mentally lately. It's been tough to focus, but I want to get back to posting more frequently again. I'm going to try and get my wrap-up filmed, so hopefully you guys will like that when it finally arrives. But until then, I will see you guys later. Bye.